This episode of Midco Sports Magazine is presented by Shields.
Hello, welcome to Midco Sports Magazine. Well, here it is, the hazy days in the middle of summer, and we are talking about football. We got three stories coming up on North Dakota and South Dakota guys who have some interesting ties to the National Football League. We will take you to the Sioux Empire Football Officials Clinic, where local referees learn from those who have officiated some of the biggest football games in history, like the Super Bowl. And we'll go to Detroit and run down Zach Zenner, former South Dakota State superstar, who is making a play to stay at the game's highest level with the Detroit Lions. But we start with a North Dakota native who is one of the most recognizable voices in the National Football League. You've probably never seen his face, but when you hear that voice, you will say, ah, that guy. His name is Jim Birdsall, and David Brown has his story.
The Wildcats paint the Bahamas blue on ESPNU.
This isn't a tale as old as time. If you want to be technically accurate, it's a tale as old as a radio or a television. You hear something or you see someone and you wonder, how do I know that guy? For all the times you've ever said, hey, that's that guy from that thing, Jim Birdsall knows exactly what you're talking about.
Who is Jim Birdsall? I am an announcer. I'm that voice on the television or on the radio, or when you go online to some site, I might have to do parlor tricks, which are basically taglines that I've done for years. So I'd have to say, when you care enough to send the very best, Hallmark. So I do my parlor tricks, then they go, oh, that's what you do.
No one would ever say Jim Birdsall has the voice of an angel.
Just gravel and nastiness. It's the, buy this or I'll kick your ass voice.
But he's been making plenty of noise since a quiet upbringing in Gladstone, North Dakota.
It's kind of an idyllic childhood. I mean, right on the river. My best friends and I would get on rafts and go down the river. We'd fish, we'd swim in the river. It was a small town where everyone knew everyone, and you couldn't get in trouble because if there was problems, everyone knew who was doing it. Everybody knows everyone's business in a tiny town.
So how did Birdsall's business go from small-town fodder to big-time media? Well, it started as most success stories clearly do, by quitting school.
When I grew up in North Dakota, I was a musician. Played in rock bands, the Lost Souls, Phoenix, the Unbelievable Uglies. Imagine that. I had played football in high school. Then I dropped out and joined a rock band, but it really pissed my coaches off. But hey, that's the way it goes. Rock band, football, rock band, rock band. That rock band wins. It wins every time.
But rock star doesn't always become the best career choice. Despite being a high school dropout, Jim eventually completed his undergrad and master's work in theater.
Growing up where I grew up, I worked on farms when I was in the summers and, hauled bales and did all that. I knew I didn't want to do that. I knew I didn't want it. That's too hard. That is hard work.
The stage was set for Jim, or so he thought. A fellow actor commented on his voice and suggested he audition for some TV and radio spots.
I didn't even know this existed. I didn't have a television, and they didn't have television broadcast to where I lived until I was, I think, in the 6th or 7th grade.
In the mid-1980s, Jim landed his first gig with a local hardware store. And then he looked at his paycheck.
It just stunned me how much I was being paid. I was like, what? You're kidding me? For that? I guess I could do this.
At a time when his face was anonymous, Jim became synonymous with some of the biggest media properties in the country. Soon enough, he was cutting down on his acting in order to cut more voice tracks. He became the voice of Hallmark, the CNBC Financial Network, and National Geographic. But sports fans know him best when he says something like this.
When the Oakland Raiders came out in the fourth quarter, it's that kind of thing. for whatever reason, my voice cuts. You know, someone can have a great voice, so it doesn't mean it's going to cut on the air, meaning it, for whatever reason, it breaks through the music, whatever is going on, and people listen to it.
For a man who didn't even see an NFL game until he finished his master's degree, Jim mastered his audition and landed the gig of a lifetime at NFL Films, becoming one of their main voices for long-form narrations, Super Bowl highlights, and annual team recaps.
I talk more if they didn't win a lot of games. There's a lot more narration because there's not a lot of highlights.
Jim set up shop in this small Kansas City studio, where unbeknownst to those at the local daycare or the McDonald's next door, he eloquently describes some of the biggest moments in league history.
Now, I sit in one little room and send my voice all over the world. Strange job. It's not something that occurs to me except at that late night when you're sitting somewhere on the deck or something and you have a libation and you're staring at the moon and then all of a sudden become philosophic and say, God, I'm everywhere, aren't I?
From a small town with a population in the hundreds to developing a voice that reaches millions, Jim Birdsall is that guy. The guy who takes advantage of his opportunities. The guy who's learned from his mistakes. The guy you've always heard but never known until now. A proud North Dakota native. A rock star. A classically trained actor. A man with many talents, but not one idea of how he got here.
Dumb luck. Absolutely blessed luck. There is no other way to describe anything like this.
Here's David Brown, and that's a fun story, man. Nice work. And obviously we know Birdsall through his voice for NFL Films, but we've probably heard him do a lot of other things as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned in the story, National Geographic, the voice of the CNBC network. When we visited him, he was auditioning for ESPN. He was doing reads for news affiliates in Seattle and Portland. He was doing a Walmart ad, a McDonald's ad, all these different things. Some of it is contracted work, but he says he actually auditions every day for different stuff. And it's just cool to see how he's basically built an empire solely on his voice.
All right, great pipes. Nice story.
Thank you.
David Brown. Up next, blowing the whistle with the best in the business, a clinic for local referees who get to learn a little something from some Super Bowl veterans.
Midco Sports Magazine on Midco Sports Network is presented by Shields.
Welcome back to Midco Sports Magazine. Well, every summer here in Sioux Falls, they have a thing called the Legends Clinics. They bring in former and current professional athletes to put on mini camps for the kids. Well, they needed officials to work the scrimmages for the football camps at these things, and that eventually led to a Legends Clinic of their own just for the officials.
This event started about 13 years ago. There were no clinics for football officials. Basketball officials had clinics all the time, but with football officials having a clinic, you need football teams playing. It grew from 20 officials to 40 officials to 60 officials. We evolved from just working scrimmages to we go probably about 2/3 of the time classroom. And we will cover various mechanics, changes, things that have evolved over the years. Then we'll go out and work scrimmages. That crew comes in and they meet with a evaluation person and he'll go through their plays. You know, you don't know what you need to improve on if someone never sees you to tell you in a constructive criticism way that, no, this would be a better way to do it, or this is the better mechanic to do it.
Well, this year at the clinic, they had referees from college national championship games, guys from the Big Ten Conference, one guy who's now an analyst for ESPN, and they all had some very interesting views on the games that they have done in the past and how they try to watch games now from a fan perspective.
Well, my name's Jim Ricketts and I'm from Sioux Falls here. My officiating career lasted 45 years.
My name is Jim Adams from Manhattan, Kansas. I officiate football in the Big 12 Conference as an umpire and have will be starting my 10th year in the Big 12 Conference with this football season.
I'm Brandon Cruz. I live in Rapid City, South Dakota. Currently, I work the referee position in the Mountain West Conference. I remember I worked my first game as it was a freshman game out in Rapid City, and after I got off the field, the first call I made was to my dad and told him I found something that I really enjoyed doing. So it really was love at first sight.
Bill Lamagnier. I'm a retired 20-year veteran of the Big Ten Conference, and currently I work for ESPN as a rules analyst. My first experience with officiating was when I first got out of college as a graduate assistant, and a friend of mine who was an official, he talked me into working a youth football game with he and his crew on Labor Day weekend. And the second the kid hit the ball, kicked off the ball in that first game I ever worked, I kind of said to myself, what am I doing here? All of a sudden the game looked so different. And the difference was I was now responsible for the game. You know, I didn't realize that at the time. It was just kind of terror and fear. But I realized it was the responsibility that you had as an official to be a guardian of the game.
My name is John Lucavansky, and I do a lot of things, but the one I think you're most interested in is I'm a NFL official. I've been a field judge for the last 6 years, coming up on my 7th year with the National Football League. I had some high school coaches that other sports than football who had an officiating crew and lost one of their guys and needed a replacement. They hung out at the golf course in the summer where I worked, and they basically badgered me into saying, yeah, I'll give that a try. In hindsight, it was probably the best thing that's ever happened to me.
You know going in that there's going to be criticism, and we're out there just like the players and coaches competing against ourselves to perform the best as we can, and that's, you know, in making every decision as correct and as accurate as we possibly can for the best of the game.
The last thing I or anyone wants to do is go home on a Sunday night and be the lead story on SportsCenter showing a call you did or didn't make or a judgment you did or didn't make costing somebody a ball game and having to live with that for a long time.
It's not easy. A beginning official will work games in gymnasiums and on fields that are not crowded. So everything that goes on, that official can hear. If you work a 7th grade basketball game or an 8th grade football game, there's 100 people there. Every time somebody says something, you can hear it. It's not just noise. And sometimes it's hard to separate that from the personal situation to the officiating situation.
The challenge that exists today is the coaches and fans all believe that the behavior that exists on TV by some of the coaches at the upper levels of collegiate football or basketball or NBA, NFL is to be tolerated at all levels. And in reality, the game is still about the kids out on the field. And I have yet to see a call or a decision reversed because of a fan or a coach just becoming completely out of character for what they would normally act like.
I'm ruined as a fan. You know, do I love to watch baseball? Sure I do. Do I love to watch football and basketball? With a passion. It's on all the time. But I watch a game now and I watch the officials. I watch their body language. I watch their mechanics. I watch how they handle calls in a game. There's things you can learn. You know, I want to duplicate and replicate what these officials did. Or you see something, you say, boy, I didn't do that with confidence, you know, let alone whether the call is correct or incorrect.
I think we're trying to, in this clinic we're doing over this weekend, you know, we're trying to, at the grassroots level, help people get involved, get interested, and continue to grow the pool of potential folks to be involved in sports officiating. And I think we need to keep doing that, and we need to do a better job of retaining newer, younger officials.
First of all, I love the game of football. So getting a chance to be out on a football field for 2 or 3 hours, that was the highlight of the week, obviously. The second thing was I look back at all the friends I have and have made over the years, and the friendships and the stories that we have. Sometimes we don't even talk about the game, but we're talking about the experiences that we have, or something crazy that happened to one of our guys.
But I worked a lot of games over the years, a lot of different places, different states, different areas. It was a heck of a ride. I have made friends all over the Midwest and all over the country that are officials, and I can call them friends and partners. And it's been great.
Well, when we come back on Midco Sports Magazine, they already call him Doc in Detroit, but this former Jackrabbit running back is putting off med school to make a run at the NFL. The latest on Zach Zenner coming up.
Midco Sports Magazine on Midco Sports Network is presented by Shields.
Welcome back to Midco Sports Magazine. If you're a college football fan in the Dakotas or Minnesota, you probably know who Zach Zenner is. He's from Eagan, Minnesota, and to say that he played football at South Dakota State is not enough. He was one of the best ever at the FCS level. He's wicked smart, and he's eventually going to go to medical school, but he's putting that off for the time being to make a run at the National Football League. Zach Zenner ran for at least 2,000 yards in 3 straight seasons at South Dakota State. He is the only player ever at the FCS level to do that.
Someone heard how many yards I had in college, went around for a little bit, but a lot of people did well in college, yeah, those are pretty good numbers, but you still got to prove you can play out here.
A lot of people think that Zenner can play in the NFL. He is 5'11", 224 pounds. He's quick, fast, rugged, he's very smart, and it has to help that the running backs coach for the Lions specifically wanted Zenner to come to Detroit as a free agent.
I was keeping my fingers crossed that some kind of way, whether we drafted him or signed him as a free agent, he would end up here, and I was fortunate that happened. I talked to him on the phone, and of course I saw him at the combine and all that, and just try to keep an eye on him, but during the draft you never know what's going to happen, and we're just fortunate it worked out our way when the day was over.
Coach Modkins is a great coach. I'm glad to be here working underneath him. He's helped me out a lot, just how they want to run things or how things are run here, the speed at which I'm supposed to go, faster on this play, tempo down here, those sort of things. It's been really good.
He's doing good along with some of our other rookies. He's doing a good job. He's on top of his stuff. He's seeing the right things and he's doing the right things. So I'm really excited about where he's at right now.
The Lions completed a rookie minicamp in May and then another team minicamp in June. And those precious days on the field gave Zenner a chance to get his considerably talented feet wet and get a feel for how the NFL was going to be different than the Missouri Valley Conference.
One thing that surprised me is that at the end of the day, we're still out here playing football. For some reason in your mind you hold that the NFL is so different, than college. Really, it's all football, but everyone's big and fast.
And a few of them are very famous. Zenner has spent time running routes with Calvin Johnson and catching passes from Matthew Stafford.
I was starstruck for sure. How can you not be? But at the same time, you got to get over that real quick because the play's coming and you got to know what you're doing.
That is not and never has been a problem for Zenner. He has taken his lunch pail and his work ethic with him to Detroit.
Yeah, he's a hard-working kid, puts the time in to be good. I can tell he goes, when he leaves here, it doesn't end for him. He goes home and he studies his stuff, and when he comes back the next day, he's ready to go. You can tell he has a really good feel for the game. There's a really good understanding of blocking schemes and where he fits into it and how to set things up and, where the hole's going to be and what the potential problems and issues are and where the soft spot's going to be at. So you can tell that, but until we get on pads, it'll be hard to say what distinguishes any of them from each other.
There are 5 other running backs on the Detroit roster right now, including second-round draft pick Amir Abdullah. Zenner and Abdullah faced off in college when the Jacks played at Nebraska in 2013. Zenner went for 202 yards on 21 carries that day. Abdullah ran 15 times for 141. But they are teammates now, for the time being at least, along with returning running backs Joik Bell and Theo Riddick.
All those guys have been really helpful, and then we're helping each other out as rookies also. From my perspective, I'm making it as hard as I can on the coaches to make a decision. That's our job as players. Yeah, we're competing against each other, but let's make them keep both of us. That's my attitude.
Another factor in Zenner's favor is the Detroit coaching staff's reputation for running a wide-open camp. Supposedly no favors given to returning players or draft picks, and full consideration given to undrafted free agents like Zenner.
there's more undrafted guys than there are, you know, 5th, 6th, and 7th rounders combined, or something like that. So, you know, there's definitely an opportunity, and there's definitely been shown that undrafted free agents can have a big impact in our league. But I see him doing some good things for us, and I think when we get on the pads, when we get into preseason, he'll even flourish a little bit more.
Zenner was an outstanding student at South Dakota State. He earned a degree in biology. He has been accepted to medical school but has deferred that enrollment for a year. He never really had a nickname in college, but he's got one now with the Lions.
We refer to him as Doc around here, so that's what he goes by now. So I apologize to his parents, but he's now known as Doc.
I'm no doctor yet, but yeah, I guess there are a lot of worse things you could be called than Doc.
And if nobody calls him Doc for another 10 years, that would be fine with Zenner. That would mean that he is still playing pro football. And he wants to be very clear on one question that he gets asked all the time. Are you committed to football? Why bang your head trying to play this game instead of studying to be a surgeon?
Maybe from the outside, that's a legitimate question, but for me, it is kind of silly. You know, I want to be out here. I want to play in the NFL first and then go pursue a degree in the, you know, healthcare field. But NFL is definitely first, and I'm working my butt off to make the team.
Well, Zenner and the other Detroit rookies have to report to training camp at the end of July. Zenner's going to be in Sioux Falls just before that, though. On July 21st, he's going to put on a clinic with the Riggs Football Academy at the Sanford Fieldhouse. Our thanks to Zach Zenner and to Jim Birdsall and everybody with the Sioux Empire Officials Clinic. We'll see you next month on Midco Sports Magazine.
This has been Midco Sports Magazine, presented by Shields.